Phil, it's just great. It's great to have you online today, just chatting about everything insolvency today. Tell us a bit about yourself.
What's to say? I'm basically my job at the moment, I think. So probably like many of us, So I'm in insolvency. I love what I do. It's probably the only time I've ever had a job where I literally love the job, and could say that I have fun in my job.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's before I found insolvency, I was probably flip-flopping around all over the place. So, really didn't take much too seriously. Certainly didn't take a career very seriously. Insolvency changed that. Well, my wife changed that for me. So, my wife's a real rock stead for me. She holds me level steaded and certainly a little level headed, and certainly lets me know when I'm getting a bit flighty. So,
can I say, I think that is something I'd say about my wife as well. And certainly once you have a steady base at home, it makes it easier to commit and really focus on the work, particularly insolvency at the moment. So you're a director at Jirsch Sutherland in Brisbane, and currently you're out of the office. It's a busy time for insolvency.
Yeah, so where I'm currently, I guess, for want of a better word, a better title, I'm currently acting managing director for an NDIS service provider, which employs 70 staff, and unfortunately, because of a director dispute, they couldn't make a decision about the business. So we got wound up on J&E grounds in the court, and we were appointed liquidators, and here I am, effectively managing the business because it's a very good business. So we can sell the whole thing across into another entity. So yeah, so it's exciting and fun and extremely challenging. So very different personalities to what I'm used to in an accounting profession. So all people that care a lot about other people, and they're very empathetic, and they're very emotional, and they're very their levels raise very quickly. So it's a unique situation for me, but I'm having fun.
Well, that's great. I mean, it sounds pretty rewarding, particularly in the context of what's been happening since March and with the coronavirus or COVID-19. I mean, how have you found the last 6 months?
The last 6 months have been tough. So I think, most people I know have been affected by it. I'm sure you have as well. So we were even, and most accounting firms, from my understanding, most accounting firms and insolvency firms have had some form of stand down, on a percentage basis. So we're still on a stand down for 20%, which is it probably will continue on through till September, I presume. Obviously, my position doesn't allow me to take much of a stand down in the current position, but look, I think that the shocking part, which everybody's talking about, the shocking part is the fact that we're not even reaching base number insolvency cases, which is I think a concern for all people. It's even started to hit the media. I've even seen some news reports about these particular as ill-informed as those news reports really are. They are sort of starting to scratch the surface on the fact that there is likely to be quite a big influx in insolvency cases. My personal view is that because of the moratoriums on debt collection, and specifically on the debt collection, not so much on the insolvent trading piece, but on the debt collection, we're likely to see divested assets that are occurring now, and people really looking to strip out businesses. And so my view is that we're likely to see a lot of court wind-ups that are potentially assetless. So it will be quite a burden, I think, on insolvency practitioners. My firm generally has a pricing policy, but I know some firms will take on any work. And I think those firms are going to struggle in terms of probably the magnitude of assetless administrations, unless ASIC come to the table and say we're going to, reduce the restrictions or reduce the complexities in terms of gaining access to the assetless administration funds. So, but I think that will be an interesting piece to see. But everybody seems to have an opinion. We'll see how it all rolls out.
Yeah, well, I guess rather than talking about our own opinions about the pros and cons of assetless administration or maybe an official receiver style model for corporate insolvency, where do you see the opportunities, whether it's for individuals and directors involved in, business improvement, in advisors involved in business restructuring? Where do you see the opportunity for the next 6-12 months?
Look, I think the opportunity is exactly in restructure, recovery, whatever you want to call it. For me, restructure is really a closed door event, and the only time you make it a formal event is if you've got debt that you need to compromise. If you've got an anchored debt or you've got certain triggers, like DPNs or a court wind-up application, those triggers, they trigger formal appointments into administration. In order to provide director protection. So I think that will definitely sort of be a large part. So opportunities for insolvency practitioners and solicitors alike, I think that there is huge amount of opportunity in terms of that director protection piece through administration and deed of company arrangement, which is great because it aligns the interest of the stakeholders and everybody sort of walks away happier. I think that there's some big opportunity in terms of just straight business recovery, actually sort of walking into a business and being able to show them how to recover those or recover that business, whether that be through a formal appointment, whether it be through a closed door, renegotiation of debt. I think that there's going to be some definite opportunity there. It just depends, like I said, on what directors have been doing in this current period, because the base of insolvency is low, which suggests to me that people are just sort of sitting on their hands, and we may be past the 8 ball effectively with a lot of companies in terms of trying to recover them. So your guess is as good as mine, I guess, Stipe. I'd like to think that we can walk into all the businesses and pull them out and, send them on their merry way in a better position. But, you and I both know that that's probably a bit of a dream.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree with you, Phil. I mean, I'm optimistic about all the things that could happen, but at the moment, I actually look at what's happening with a level of cynicism. I mean, even things like the deferral of various enforcement mechanisms and insolvent trading liability, it makes me think that people might be overlooking other liabilities, other risks, including some of the changes more recently about, illegal phoenixing and so on. And it does, cause me genuine concern that people aren't necessarily reaching out to people such as yourself or I to talk about, well, what are some meaningful strategies I can put in place today to either protect my personal asset position or to improve my business or to preserve the value of my business in some way. And I think the apathy of the market and the way people have viewed the government stimulus is going to be really challenging. So I certainly think you're right on all fronts. But a bit of a pointed question. At the beginning of the coronavirus, I think a lot of us were talking about holding DOCAs. What do you think? Because frankly, I haven't seen them used much. It seems to me,
I think,
it's a strategy for another day.
Yeah, look, I think that at the start of the coronavirus, the holding DOCA, it was the primary piece that people were sort of throwing out there. And I think it was purely because of that ability to hold and say, let's wait and see what happens. But the government did it for us. They put in place moratorium on debt collection, and they put in place a moratorium on insolvent trading liability. So, no need for a holding DOCA. You've got one inbuilt into the legislation. So I think that's why it didn't sort of pan out that way. I think the problem is that a holding DOCA, potentially allows an organisation or a director particularly, right, to still put together, a DOCA which will resolve the debt situation, and actually trade out of that holding DOCA position, right, and still provide protections. Well, aside from personal guarantees, but they're another piece, but still provide the director with some protections in relation to breaches of duty, because insolvent trading is not the only claim that's going to come after. there are, now you've got the CDD, what are the creditor defeating dispositions. Like,
yes, yeah.
That's only reasonably new and reasonably untested at the moment. So and a pretty big stick, for both ASIC and insolvency practitioners. So there's quite a lot of things there that the voluntary administration into holding DOCA would have provided big protection for directors and an avenue to bring the business out. Whereas the moratorium doesn't do that. The moratorium just says, don't do anything, sit on your hands and see what happens. Now, unless trade miraculously just picks up, at the end of this moratorium, businesses are in a worse position because they've been sitting on their hands. They've probably been accruing some liability, and all the liability is just sitting there, and they're still in the same position as what they were at the start, because we know that trade is not picking up at the same pace. Look at Victoria. We're in our second wave, where what I'm reading about is that we're now in the bounce. And this bounce could go on for the next 2 years. So open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. And the moratorium doesn't solve that problem, right? But
no.
the VA or into a holding DOCA, or the VA into DOCA, does provide that protection, and I think that the message has just been incorrectly driven out there, not by people in the profession, but by the government, in terms of saying, let's what was the terminology that they used? Let's go into hibernation, which hibernation is not necessarily the answer for businesses that are going to struggle. So,
look, can I say I absolutely agree, and I do worry what will happen if we get to a second or third bounce further north on the east coast, whether it's in Sydney or Canberra and Brisbane on your end. Well, Phil, it's been great to have you on board, and I really look forward to doing it again. I hope you have a fantastic day.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks, mate.